Astrophysicist Milo Rodrix sits in an old chair in a shabby, post-apocalyptic world to communicate with a small hovering vessel by introducing himself, stating that he's the last human being and begging its controller not to forget about humans and their culture. In 2016, in a world plagued with war, famine, injustice, and disease, the human race tries to endure the misery and survive in hopes of seeing a better tomorrow. In New York, young Milo Rodrix, who is confined to a wheelchair, sees an alarming civil emergency message on TV. He and his mother are then visited by a mysterious force in the form of his late father, looking to pass a message from another world. Meanwhile, in Hampstead, Missouri, as farmer Ricky Stormgren returns home, he sees the same message and is visited by a force in the form of his late wife, Annabelle. Then a few moments later, strange vessels start hovering around various cities of the world, breaking all cellular communications, which sends people and governments into a spiral of mayhem. Then, people all over the world report contact from an entity named Corellin in the form of their dead loved ones, who claims to be a supervisor of Earth, promises to end all sufferings and war around the Earth, and to usher a peaceful utopian age upon the world. Elsewhere, media mogul Hugo Wainwright Jr., who is highly suspicious of the supervisor's motives, publicly states his distrust and labels the visitors the overlords. News channels around the world started reporting that all of the major conflicts around the Earth have all been resolved, and show societies from opposite spectrums of belief embracing each other. In Hampstead, the residents of the small town gather for a meeting and anxiously ask their mayor how they should proceed. Ricky, who is a beloved and respected member of the farming community, calms everyone and tells them to patiently wait out their visitors and give them the benefit of the doubt, as they haven't done anything bad so far. Later that day, Ricky and his new fiancée, Ellie, are visited by one of the vessels, which threatens to destroy their house unless Ricky joins it aboard the ship. Having no choice, Ricky boards the vessel and is amused to see a recreation of his honeymoon suit, which takes him back to the happiest day of his life when he wedded Annabelle. The unseen force then speaks to Ricky from behind a mirrored wall. It introduces itself as Corellin and asks Ricky to be its ambassador, standing between humans and the overlords so that they can come to a common understanding and work together. It then gives Ricky a metallic vial and trusts him to do as he wishes with it. The incident of Ricky's kidnapping is reported, which attracts the media and even the CIA. Everyone gathers around Ricky's residence to find out what they can, and is surprised to see the vessel returning to peacefully discharge Ricky. Ricky is then approached by CIA Director Paul Danlow, who questions him about what took place on the vessel and to open and hand over the metallic vial. Paul then takes Ricky to the White House. On the way, reports that the moment the vial was opened, patients around the world started showing remarkable improvement. At the White House, Ricky is forced to address the confused media at a press conference where he informs them that Corellin has promised to stop all wars in the world and deal with environmental pollution. Still confused, the media bombards Ricky with many questions he can't answer. As soon as he's finished, Ricky is taken back to the vessel to continue discussions with Corellin. During the discussion, Ricky asks Corellin to show its face, but Corellin refuses, claiming that humans won't accept it in its true form. Hugo Jr. becomes more suspicious of the overlords and forms the Freedom League, dedicated to fighting against the visitors, which they deem are invaders, by trying to convince people that the overlords are trying to get their guards down, so by the time they're ready to attack them, they will face no resistance. After exterminating all the wars in the world and restoring world peace, Corellin turns its attention to tackling famine. The Freedom League continues to spread conspiracy theories regarding the motives behind the overlords, while Ricky has completely gotten on board with their new ruler's vision, as he believes it has brought forth a new golden age of humanity. 6 months later, the vessels have continued to hover above different cities, still not revealing their identity, which casts doubt in people's minds and gives Freedom League momentum. The bright Mio writes an essay on the overlords and sends it to Massachusetts University, which gains him a scholarship to attend a well-known middle school that accommodates his special needs. In one of his regular meetings with Corellin, Ricky fails to convince his mysterious boss to reveal himself and proceeds to try to look into the mirror, but is soon shut down by an angry Karelin. One day, Milo discreetly gets in his wheelchair and sneaks out of the apartment to catch his mother doing a drug deal. Milo sees the drug dealer shoving his mother and confronts him. The irritated dealer then angrily proceeds to shoot and kill the young boy. The mother is beside herself and screams in grief, holding on to Milo's body. At that moment, a light comes from one of the vessels, fatally attacks the dealer, and brings Milo back to the shock of his mother. Milo, now also cured of his ailments, walks up from his wheelchair and starts walking. A few nights later, as Ricky and Ellie have a romantic dinner together, Ellie accuses Ricky of still being in love with Annabelle and emotionally cheating on her every time he is in his honeymoon suite on Karelin's vessel, and the couple argues. Later that night, Ricky hears a noise and is kidnapped as he goes out to check it. The kidnappers take Ricky to an isolated building in the middle of nowhere and present him to their boss, Hugo Jr., who asks Ricky to join the Freedom League and help them with their resistance by destroying all the good things built, polluting the now clean environment, and starting wars to frustrate the overlords and force them to leave. When Ricky refuses to join, Hugo Jr.'s men try to shoot the farmer, but are frozen in time by Clarke, who safely transports Ricky back to his farm. Unbeknownst to Hugo Jr., this incident is broadcast all over the world, which upsets his followers. At the farm, Ricky is once again visited by Annabelle, who reminds him of all the wonderful times they had together. Ricky then summons his courage to tell his beloved late wife that he can no longer interact with her and goes back to Ellie. The next day, on the vessel, Ricky once again pleads with Clarke to show itself, but the ruler refuses to, claiming that human beings need much more psychological preparation to handle its appearance. Clarke then dismisses Ricky from his job as an ambassador, as he has achieved most of its plans and no longer needs him. Then, feeling liberated from his responsibilities, Ricky once again proposes to Ellie and promises to be a better fiancé and husband. A few days later, it's reported that Hugo Jr. has been found hanged and declared dead in his office. Elsewhere, now fully cured, Milo dreams of one day going to the Overlord's planet to see their world. 15 years later, Milo has graduated from MIT in astrophysics, while his mom has gotten clean from drugs. The world has improved to a great extent, with war and pollution eradicated. It's filled with picturesque, beautiful flora, and everyone lives a calm, stress-free, and youthful life, leading humans to see the overlords as their guardian angels. Then, the long-awaited day of Clarke's reveal arrives. Everyone gathers in stadiums, bars, and in the street to finally see the supervisors who have provided them with so much greatness. Then a vessel lands in a stadium, and to the world's utter terror, Clarke reveals itself to be the devil and comes out escorted by children. It's now 2035, which marks the 19th year of the Overlord's arrival, and the 4th year since Karelin's reveal. Milo works in a space program at Boyce Institute of Research, located in South Africa, and wonders why scientific inquiry has decreased over the last few years, especially after Karelin has befriended its owner, Dr. Rupert Boyce. After a few months, the space program is shut, and Milo packs up his stuff from his lab, bids farewell to his colleague Rachel, and leaves planning to use his newfound free time to do private research into the origin and background of the Overlords. After almost 2 decades, Karelin visits Ricky at night in Missouri. Ricky is creeped out by the up-close view of the Devil Supervisor and tries to keep the conversation light until Karelin ominously apologizes for what's to come and leaves. Word of Karelin's visit gets out, and people once again gather around Ricky's farm in hopes of finding an answer. All of a sudden, the Earth is shaken up by a tremor-like vibration which frightens everyone. Then Dr. Rupert is informed of the sudden appearance of a fully built room in his facility and goes to check it out. He bravely enters the strange room and is fascinated to see it's fully furnished with a large witchboard in the center. A few nights later, a vessel visits a family named the Gregsons in California. The vessel releases a light that causes the mother Amy to scream of stomach aches while fighting an unseen force in the name of saving children. The young boy, Tommy, is also visited by the light, which sends him into a trance and causes him to attack his father, Jake, who comes to check on him. The next morning, Jake convinces Amy to seek a counselor named Peretta Jones's help to figure out what's going on with Tommy. Peretta comes to their house to talk to the young boy in the comfort of his usual surroundings. Peretta speaks to Tommy in his room and is bewildered to hear him claim that something takes him to a dark and warm place at night. As he goes to describe the place, he starts hearing babies crying in his head and runs out of his room screaming at the top of his lungs. The shocked parents try to calm Tommy down and ask Peretta, who follows him out of his bedroom, what happened. Then all of a sudden, Peretta gets choked by the cross necklace around her neck until it breaks and falls to the ground, by which time the cries stop in Tommy's head. Tommy then calmly walks to his mom, holds her belly, and tells her that everything will be okay as the baby has stopped crying, which bewilders everyone, especially Amy, who tells her son that she's not pregnant. The terrified Peretta runs out of the house, warning Jake to be careful. In Missouri, Ricky prepares a romantic dinner for his wife Ellie, and as he starts to confide in her what Calloran has told him, he gets distracted by the many people gathering around his house and goes out to disperse them. However, once outside, he starts screaming from sudden pain and falls down. Ricky is rushed to the hospital, where he is told that his organs have started decaying and that there's nothing to stop the fatal process. The doctor also surmises that this illness is the reason why the couple hasn't been able to procreate yet. Ricky remembers that Corellin had told him that the vessels had poisoned him and is deeply saddened. However, Ellie vows to stand by him. Elsewhere, Peretta is deeply troubled by her encounter with Tommy, goes to a church, and runs into her old pastor. Together, they search ancient books and find a picture of the dark, warm place Tommy described. 4 months later, Amy discovers that she's 4 months pregnant with a baby girl and decides to name her Jennifer. Tommy seems to be doing better, but Jake is still troubled by some weird coincidences he observes around the house and starts wishing to go to New Athens, the last free city of the world, outside of the Overlord's jurisdiction, where there's still crime, pollution, where people have to work to make a living, and a world which resembles the old one. One night, Peretta comes to the Gregsons' house to warn them that they are being watched by the Overlords, but is quickly shut down by the skeptical parents. Meanwhile, Dr. Rupert orders his colleague Morton to invite the Gregsons to the upcoming office party and fly them out to South Africa, as ordered by Calloran. Morton shares the invitation to Jake under the disguise of a job interview. Skeptical Jake declines the offer, which sounds too good to be true, but is persuaded by Amy, who is excited to visit the exotic continent and accepts it. Elsewhere, after much research, Peretta discovers that the Overlords have been deceiving humanity and decides to go to Ricky's farm and join the many gathered around his house in hopes of finding some answers. After spending a couple of days there, she befriends Ellie and starts chit-chatting with her regularly. At the research facility, Rachel asks Milo out to take her to the office party, and he accepts. The Gregsons fly out to the party, and upon their arrival, are greeted warmly by Dr. Rupert, who has Tommy escorted to a zoo area by Morton. Dr. Rupert then takes Amy away, which leaves Jake to wander around alone and run into Milo. The two men keep each other company, and Jake is alarmed to learn that the Institute is no longer hiring. Jake immediately finds Amy, tells her what he learned, and goes to fetch Tommy, during which time Dr. Rupert presents Calloran to the guests. Calloran makes a small speech about the redundancy of scientific research, as all the Earth's problems have been solved, and proceeds to leave the crowd with Dr. Rupert. A few moments later, Dr. Rupert asks Amy to join him and Calloran in a private meeting, and takes her to the mysterious room with the switchboard, while Jake finds Tommy and proceeds to leave the zoo with him. Calloran asks Amy to put her hands on the witchboard and starts talking to her unborn baby, asking her to accept who she is. At the same time, Tommy goes into a trance and resists his father's order to follow him. As soon as Amy touches the board, a light protrudes out of the room, and Amy attacks Dr. Rupert, who tries to check on her, while simultaneously Tommy attacks Jake. As Amy fiercely moves the controller of the witchboard, Tommy runs to the top of the building, answering a mysterious, unheard call as Jake runs after him. All the guests are mystified and observe the light, which reveals a weird letter marking. On top of the building, Tommy declares that Jennifer's awake and throws himself off the building, while in the witchboard room, Calloran declares that it's done, Jennifer's awake, and that she understands. Outside, Jake finds Tommy levitating above the ground and slowly holds on to him. Tommy soon comes out of his trance and apologizes for everything. Jake takes Tommy, finds Amy and the Gregsons, leave the party. Meanwhile, Milo recognizes the letter in the light, rushes home to combine it with all the other data he collected on the Overlords, and figures out that it all adds up to show the Carina constellation, which is the only system with planets, and concludes that it must be the home of the Overlords. Filled with excitement, Milo and Rachel kiss and begin a relationship. A few days later, Caloran shows up at Ricky's farm and gives him a metallic vial with a rare cure for his condition. As Ellie introduces herself to Caloran, Peretta storms in, accusing the supervisor of lying and making the Stormgren sterile. Caloran confirms the accusation and explains that he only robbed the couple of parenthood to spare them from the upcoming pain, which will be especially hard on parents. Having had enough, Peretta shoots Caloran and fatally injures it. However, Ricky gives Caloran the rare cure meant for him, which heals him. Caloran ominously declares that despite what happens to it, nothing can stop the painful times ahead. Forever changed, Peretta returns to her home and throws herself from a building. Amy gives birth to Jennifer, whose eyes change into fluorescent green as soon as she takes her first breath. 4 years later, children have seemingly developed telekinetic abilities, and all seem to be connected, fascinated, and commanded by the 4-year-old Jennifer. One day, Caloran visits Ricky, who is getting weaker from the illness, tries to comfort him, and tell him about the future of the world. However, the frustrated Ricky can no longer take the supervisor's tricks and storms off, telling it to leave him and his wife alone. A few days later, all kids around the world go into a trance and start chanting Jennifer's name. Later that night, Jake sees multiple kids gathered around the house in hopes of finding Jennifer. In South Africa, Milo figures out that all the children of the world are mentally connected to one another and all look up to Jennifer and call Jake in hopes of learning more about Jennifer. Tommy tells his parents that Jennifer takes him and the rest of the kids to a different world where even the Overlords have never been. As the bizarre activities continue accompanied by Jennifer's strange behaviors, Jake decides to move the family to the free city of New Athens. There, the Gregsons are fascinated to find life the way it used to be, filled with music and culture. A couple of hours after their arrival, the Gregsons are taken to see the mayor. Jerry Hall Cross, who welcomes them, explains his strong commitment to lead a life without the Overlord's interference, shows them around, and gives them an apartment to settle in. In Missouri, Ricky and Ellie are finally free to spend their time together without the interference of Caloran. They spend the days enjoying each other's company and treasuring the good times, with fear of Ricky's future hovering in the back of their minds. In New Athens, Amy convinces Jake to reply to Milo's multiple calls, hoping he might help them understand Jennifer. Milo has Jake place a mirror in front of the young girl and speaks to her on a video call, asking her to look into her own eyes through the mirror and tell him what she sees. Jennifer freaks everyone by declaring that she sees all. She then shows Milo a light through her eyes, which eventually leads to an explosion of a massive rock, and states that the end is beginning. Milo tells Rachel about his interaction with the little girl and shares his fear for the future of the Earth. Milo then asks his girlfriend to help him get on the Overlord ship the next time she sends animal species, which saddens her. Milo calms Rachel down and details that even though it would roughly take him 100 days to travel to and from the Overlord's planet, which translates into 80 human years, he must go and try to find a way to help Earth. Rachel desperately begs him to stay, but fails to change his mind. The couple then share an emotional farewell, profess their love to one another, and promise to wait for each other. Soon after, Rachel equips Milo with all the necessary supplies, vacuum seals him, and packs him on a transport truck with the rest of the animals. In Missouri, Ricky starts experiencing excruciating pain and cries out in pain. In his mind, he is transported to his honeymoon suite and visited by Annabelle. As Ricky enjoys his late wife's company, Callender offers to slow down time and let him stay there forever. Ricky takes a moment to think clearly and finally tells Callender to destroy the memory of Annabelle and runs to his farm to see Ellie. Ellie follows Ricky as he stops screaming and runs out of the house. He falls down on the lawn and tells his loving wife that has never loved anyone as much as her before passing on. Ellie sits there holding on to Ricky and crying in grief, thinking of all the good times. In New Athens, the Gregsons go to the cinema to enjoy a family movie. After a few minutes, the movie is interrupted by a message from Corellin, which informs all parents that their children are no longer theirs, that they will soon evolve into a higher being, that no children will ever be born again, and that the adults are free to do as they please with the rest of their time. A light comes from the sky, and children all over the world go in a trance and start levitating towards it, which causes mayhem as the terrified parents kick and scream to hold on to their kids. Jennifer levitates away, but Amy and Jake manage to hold on to Tommy. The trio then finds Jerry, who has set off a nuclear bomb to destroy the free city, and Jake tries to talk to him and change his mind. Meanwhile, Tommy disappears and Amy goes in search of him. When she finds him, Tommy informs her that Jennifer has only given him more time to say goodbye and that he has to go. Amy cries in pain as he watches her son leave. She returns to Jake, and the couple share how much they love each other right before the bomb goes off, destroying half the world. Elsewhere, Milo wakes up on the ship 40 Earth years later and meets another of the Overlord's devils named Vindarton, who shows him around and tells him about their homeland named Yenjetta, a dark world filled with fire on the ground and smoke in the air. Vindarton then explains that this is all planned by a superior being named the Overmind, and that they have overseen the evolution of other worlds under its order. It then takes Milo to see the Overmind, which describes itself as a collective consciousness of the universe and explains that the children have to evolve into a single mind. Milo is freaked out by the interaction and asks to be taken back to Earth to see Rachel. He passes out and wakes up 45 Earth years later on the ship and is met by Vindarton and Corellin, who inform him of Rachel's death and explain that the Earth has been destroyed a long time ago. Milo is grief-stricken, and soon it dawns on him that he is the last surviving human. The Overlords offer to let him live with them on their vessel, as there's nothing to return to on Earth, but Milo refuses and opts to be taken to Earth, promising to report what happens there to Caloran. Milo arrives on Earth and finds it shabby and in its post-apocalyptic form. He sits on an old chair and communicates with Caloran, stating his name and profession and begging it to save something of the Earths. He then walks around the abandoned Earth and sees Jennifer levitating on top of a mountain, draining energy from everything around her. Caloran comforts Milo and, upon his desperate request, saves the Doctor's favorite childhood music and plays it as the only thing remaining of the Earth's existence. The episode ends as Jennifer continues to draw energy, forcing the Earth to explode, just as Milo had seen through her eyes when he examined her. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.